London. I haven't been back since I was 10, so it's exciting to come all this way to meet all of you. I'm a product designer at Netflix. We're a flat structure, but I actually specialize in experience design and motion design. I've worked on the TV, mobile, and website teams, and my goal has always been to create more immersive and engaging experiences cross-platform throughout the Netflix world. So our goal at the team at Netflix is to help 137 million members find something to watch. That's across 190 countries. This massive audience means that one single solution is never going to work. We have to think globally, and we have to rely on research and design combined collaboratively in order to create a narrative around content, especially all of this content that we have on our service. I'm going to start with a narrative of my own. About 3 years ago, I was in Kyoto, Japan. I was completely surrounded by maple trees, and I was walking through this insane forest. I came out through this trail, and I found myself at a small lake. And this lake had this crazy gold reflection. I looked across the lake, and there was a temple completely covered in gold leaf. It was probably the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen in my life. Now, how many of you found yourself trying to picture where I was and what I was talking about? This is because people connect to stories. It's because people build that anticipation of wanting to know what comes next. They immediately engage in what you're saying. In his book, The Culture Code, Daniel Coyle, he talks about how sometimes stories are meant to say or explain how things are. But really, he believes that stories can create a new future for people. To study this, they actually studied people's brains. They did brain scans, and they found when people were told facts, their brains lit up sporadically here and there. But when people were told stories, as Daniel Coyle likes to put it, people's brains lit up like Las Vegas. Quite different. This is the kind of experience that we want to create. It's our human nature to be intrigued and engaged with stories. And this proves that storytelling is essential in our world as well as in design. With that, I want to clear a common misconception. A lot of people still believe that animation is not essential, and I'm going to challenge that today and say that animation is completely essential. I've heard it's a nice to have, and it's an expensive last 10%, and of course, the famous word, we don't have time for fancy animation. At Netflix, motion design is embedded in an equal part to visual design and UX throughout the entire process, from brainstorming and concepting all the way to execution. And what we have found is this actually brings a completely different perspective and has changed how the designers think about the flow. And it's even started to change how engineering builds projects from the very beginning, so that we have more seamless and impactful motion at the end, and it wasn't expensive. With product design, animation is storytelling. If you want to guide and inform your audience, you have to help them with storytelling so that neither animation or storytelling can be optional within this design process anymore. In the entertainment business, we hear the word storytelling a lot. But with movies and shows, it means something a little different than how it would mean in product design. In movies and shows, it's defined as the process of connecting through others' narrative or experience. To this day, it's the single most common way that people share their experiences around the world. It's how our ancestors passed down laws and lessons so that we actually have a shared history. It's the way that cultures explain legends and glorify heroes of the past and pass down information to their generations. And today, we use storytelling every single day to bond with every person that you know. And it's actually how our kids are starting to learn about how to be good people from very young ages, about learning to love nature, love your parents, love family. So since storytelling is such an essential way of life, I believe it should be carried into the process of product design. Design should use storytelling to connect people to the right experience for them. Throughout this talk, I'm going to give you some questions, some key questions you can take back with you to the workplace to start challenging this mindset of thinking about design as a storyteller. So let's start. The big question I know a lot of you have asked yourself, raise your hand if you've sat at home at night and asked yourself, what do I want to watch? Right? Well, we've all been there. Then you tend to, gloss over, look through a million options, ask yourself, what the hell am I in the mood for? There's too many things to look at. This is the beginning of our users' journey into our product every single day across all of these 190 countries. And we have the opportunity to help guide and inform people to make the right decisions by connecting them through this product experience. So I'm going to explain some things that I've learned in my years at Netflix. I have found 4 principles that cover thinking about the user, design, as well as animation that I believe help create this new exciting way to design for the product. The first one is build trust. This ties directly to the user and understanding how a user thinks and their needs. Number 2, focus and simplify. This speaks straight to the design process. Design pathways. This is a bridge between the design into animation. And connect the dots. It's all about the animation. So let's dive into number 1. Building trust between you and your user so that your product can actually speak to a person and have them trust what you recommend is really difficult. And before I can even speak to that, we have to back up a second because I think there's something much more important at the front end of that before you can even build trust. I've learned that you can't even begin to build trust until you recognize that people's time is extremely valuable. If you don't see this, there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to come across any trust. And the tricky part with trust is that the perception of time is actually greater than the reality of time. So you have to understand that someone sees their time as much longer and more valuable than it actually is in reality. There are so many examples of this. When you're in the middle of a workout, a minute literally feels like a torturous eternity. But if you're taking a nap, 20 minutes feels like 30 seconds. So I'm going to start with a poll. I'm going to show you 2 animations, and I'm going to ask you a question at the end. Here's the first one. And the second. I'm going to ask you which one you thought took more time. If you thought it was the first example, raise your hand. And the second example. All right. They were the same. So the first one with no movement, when shown to most people, actually feels a lot longer. And this is because they're not being communicated to. They're not being told anything. Whereas the second example is the start of storytelling. We've started to tell you where you are. We've started to explain that you were involved with the next Netflix brand. And it's building anticipation with progressive movement to where the homepage will actually launch. When people don't have any form of communication, the perception of time becomes extremely warped. With no cues or communication, you're asking someone to wait infinity, which is absolutely insane. If you think about it, if their time is so valuable and they've been requested to wait infinity, they put more value on the result. And they think, if I don't get anything out of this, it's not worth it. The chances of people bailing out of a product skyrocket. Loading times around the world can be so much longer than even this, especially here in London or what we experience in San Francisco. I was in Bogota, Colombia, doing research with the mobile team, and I sat down with this young woman. She opened one of her apps and immediately set it down and started continuing the conversation, which seemed a little odd to me. And I started watching her phone, and the spinner just kept going and going and going. And I finally had to stop her and say, "Is this normal?" And she said, "Yeah, everything's like this." And I said, well, how do you know anything's working? She goes, well, it eventually does. My mind was completely blown because if you slow down a network so much, I don't think you even understand how often you see these spinners. It ends up being almost 50% of your experience. This is a common case for so many other people around the world. And this is a clear opportunity to start building connection. Signal to people that things are moving and working. If you start your experience with an empty screen and no communication, you've broken the story and the connection from the very beginning of someone using your experience. When you signal that you know that someone is waiting, people become more relaxed, they become more patient, and they'll actually wait longer. And then at the end of that, the time that they waited, to them will actually feel shorter than the exact same amount of time with no context. And if it actually ends up being longer, people don't perceive that as longer at all. A key point to make here is not to avoid time. You don't want to add length to the amount, but you want to mask it with something more delightful and more engaging. The product should still be running and loading in the background, but you can place something delightful and engaging on the top to cover the experience. Use that moment to be a storyteller. You communicate to people that things are working, so not only does the perception of the length of time reduce, satisfaction increases. Now the user's entry into the experience has been delightful, informative, and they actually will see the experience as being more reliable and faster. Okay, now that we understand the value of someone's time, let's go back to the first point, building trust. Now you have to build trust within that very precious time frame for people. In a world where more and more TV shows and movies are coming out every single month, if not every single week, people need even more information to help them decide what to watch. Our research team at Netflix has actually started to study how people convince each other, friends or family, to watch something that they don't know anything about. And they found a common pattern. When you look at this wall, the 4 you knew before are common things that people all understand. But when our world starts to look a lot like this, clearly you're going to need a lot more information to find something you know you would be committed to watching. Here are some of the foundations that we found within our research. First, you have to build trust. When convincing a family or friend what they should watch, there has to be that foundation. Your friend or family has to believe that you're altruistic, meaning that you have no ulterior motives. You're literally recommending them something because you believe that they will get enjoyment out of it. It has nothing to do with you. You have to be competent in their likes and dislikes, and then you have to have a good record of consistently recommending something that they would love. Once you have trust, then you move on to familiarity. Once you've created that solid foundation, you can relate to them on familiar levels that you both connect to. Comparing how an unfamiliar show is like or not like something you're both aware of and understand, they can accurately decide if that's actually a good fit or not. And then you can also point out aspects that would draw them in, like a favorite director, a favorite actor, or some really unique spin on some genre that you know that they're attracted to. And lastly, once you have trust and familiarity, it's all about personalization. Talk to them, talk to people. Everyone's unique, and recommendations need to be equally as unique. You need to read the room and understand the right time to recommend the right thing to the person. And you have to convey how this movie or this show is actually going to make them feel and what mood it's going to put them into. There isn't anything more unique than an in-person recommendation. And this ties back to storytelling and how we can create that feeling within our designs. At Netflix, our teams are working really closely together to try and create connections with people of all cultures around the world. And we take these foundations of familiarity, trust, and personalization to try and curate that experience. So when thinking about this first principle, you can ask yourself, what foundation am I building initially before starting the story I am trying to tell? On to our second principle, focus and simplify. At Netflix, the design team works extremely close with our research team. We have daily hallway conversations where we pass around data, key points of data, key feature ideas, and we merge all the time to try and understand, is this the right experience to make everything better for our users? We partner in all of our research A/B tests. We partner in every time we write a hypothesis, and we actually travel the world together so that designers can actually see what researchers see, experience how people feel, and talk to real people about their experiences with Netflix. And the design team has done a lot of work over the last couple years to make sure that when someone enters the mobile design experience, they actually feel more excited to browse around. We've looked through the lens of storytelling really early in the design process throughout these last couple years because we want to consider how people enter into this discovery through a pathway. Think of it as someone entering into the product. We need to understand how little or how much to put in front of someone at one time because it's essential to them being able to make a confident decision. One constant topic of discussion has been breadth versus depth. We have to understand when to show someone many options and a huge variety, making it easier for someone to kind of gauge what they might want to watch. But on the other side of that, we have to provide deeper and more meaningful information soon enough so that they're not tediously digging in and out of information before they can make a decision. You have to break up the layout to allow focus and flow through the experience. How many of us lie to ourselves? Raise your hand, it's every single person in this room. The point of this is that people will always say that they want more, if not all of the options. But the result is they can't make a decision. It completely eliminates that ability. Options become diluted and less valuable individually. When people have no choice, life feels completely impossible. But with too many choices, they become debilitated and completely overwhelmed. More choices is not better in some cases. So to balance the concept of too many options, let's flip it and do another poll. Who knows what show or movie this could be just based on the summary? Darkness, dysfunction, grief. So many ghosts. Some houses aren't meant to be lived in. The Haunting on Hill House. I watched one episode and I'm still having nightmares, so I don't know if I can keep going. But having an image and the summary is the main way that people have been assessing whether they want to watch something or not, and we know it's not enough. We feel it's not only a business imperative, but essential to the user experience to more accurately provide examples of what something is or is not. One of the ways the team has begun to do this is by adding tags in addition to images and summaries. Hashtags are known widely around the world because of social media. So the teams at Netflix have started associating tags with every single movie and TV show. And not just a few, a lot. Because like recommending a show to a friend or a family member, certain tags that might capture one of you is not going to capture another person. Tags at a glance lets you know whether this is a TV show or a movie, whether it's where it originates, so you actually will know if you need subtitles or not, moods, genres, key actors and directors, so you actually get a larger spectrum of knowledge with just a small amount of space. Tags had a positive impact on almost every single person, but especially for people in non-English speaking countries. We believe that tags help people more quickly reason if a show or movie was going to appeal to them, even if it wasn't written in their native language. And then you take the challenge, yes, on this screen, that image told you a lot. What happens when you put it on a mobile screen? We chose to take a larger, fuller space within the mobile home screen because we believe that this larger image needed to have that same impact as the one I was showing you before. And then we've incorporated tags. This creates initial focus and what we call stopping power. It has more impact on your eye and tells you more of a story. It gives you more meaningful themes and shows you more clearly what this show can be about. And then when you expand it across a bunch of different titles, you start to see that it gives you a different emotive feeling depending on what the artwork is, and you associate that with the tags, and you actually can decide a lot faster whether this is something for you or not. Lastly, if browsing is actually something that you don't want to do, we always have a persistent row to get someone right back into the thing that they were already watching. This is our continue watching row, and it has minimal information. It's literally that image you would recognize with a play button because you're already familiar with it. You don't need anything extra to make that decision. But at the same time, we're giving you a simple choice to balance out that depth and the breadth of all the rest of the catalog. So when thinking about this principle, ask yourself, how am I balancing breadth and depth through the experience? Moving on to the third principle, design pathways. Every story starts with the beginning. For product design, that's the entrance into the experience. But then you have to decide, where do you want to go from there? Within the homepage, there needs to be clear options within the UI, because clear options mean faster decisions for your members. Just a month ago, the mobile team rolled out a new way to filter the homepage so that people could more accurately decide what they're in the mood for. We've exposed a set of clear options: TV shows, movies, and My List. Prior to these filters, as well as prior to the lower nav bar on the bottom, people had to tap into a singular icon menu that contained all of this in one list. Sure, a single menu item helps clean up UX, but you're not telling your user anything. You're requiring them to open something, dig in, and guess, and search around. With filters, we're using the UI to guide the user to a faster decision. And we actually decided on these 3 filters because we found that people, based at the top level of needing to decide what they wanted to watch, they decide based on the duration that they think that they have. And with movies being longer, TV shows shorter, and My List is something that you already know because you've saved, that gives you a 3-way decision at the top level to make a quicker decision and get into something that you know that you'll love. Another benefit of adding filters is that it provided this large custom image a chance to show up more than once, being different almost every single time, giving more shows and more movies, more impact, and telling more stories to members. So it's not a one chance that we're gonna show you a big image and it's not gonna be the one for you. Now there are multiple. This year, we also created a new row. It's a new type of discovery that we call the previews row. This row is unique because its primary goal is to be the most immersive mobile space. This row uses a familiar social pattern, the circular icon, and it signals 2 things. One, it's gonna do something different than all the rectangular boxes on the homepage. And within social paradigms, it represents that a short video is gonna open. It's important to know when to leverage existing models versus trying to recreate your own. This was a project where we had assets in place, we had social paradigms that were already ready, and it just made sense. And people always say they just want to watch more trailers. So a full bleed vertical video row allows people to quickly understand what it would actually feel like to watch it. You can read a synopsis, you can look at an image, and you can read tags. But this is an experience that actually allows you to feel what it will feel like. Phones contain so many apps that we're in and out of constantly. And research has found that people spend an average of 5 minutes per time they pick their phone up. Now divide that 5 minutes across how many apps you probably open every single time you pick it up. Netflix needed an engaging way to try and fit into this dynamic. So while sitting with groups of members and talking to them, people often talked about how much They would like to watch video, but they're not gonna rotate their phone into landscape, which within Netflix was the only way that you could watch Netflix. So this vertical video allowed us a new opportunity for people to hold it upright and continue on the go. So this allowed more brief and engaging modes of entertainment. And we chose the widely known interactions like tap and swipe to next. And we even put an easy swipe down because when you're holding your phone with one hand, we know how much of a pain it is to try and reach up with your one thumb and get that close. So we made the design simple and clean, and we let the video be the hero. We only put essential options. Play it, get more details, or add it to your list, or move on to the next ones. Throughout our experience, it's our job to create various pathways. We have to present the right story to the right person at the right time. So when thinking about this principle, ask yourself, how am I using the UI to guide a user's understanding and decision making? On to the fourth principle, connect the dots. This is my favorite one. Let's all pretend we're in a movie theater just like this. And you're on the edge of your seat, you're so excited, you can't wait for the plot to turn, but the screen shuts off. You're broken out of that experience and it's jarring and completely unacceptable. That's the same for design and interactions and animations. Without them, without transitions, the experience feels broken into pieces instead of a seamless connected flow. All of these animations that I've shown you and all of these examples of different projects have had animation and storytelling embedded from the very beginning. And because of that, we found that it feels more cohesive. We have to be a guide through the experience, keeping in mind that providing essential seamless motion, you keep your users immersed and connected to what you're trying to show them. We've come a long way from the singular static pages and tapping between them with on-off states. And let me give you a hint. If anything in your experience is turning on and off, it's not a transition. Have them add opacity. So we have to understand how animation affects things. When you're thinking of the future, you have to think, how does it actually change how this lives and breathes within the ecosystem of the greater product? So UI animation at its core is how does design live within this ecosystem? Can it live harmoniously? Mixing animation systems like iOS, Android, or native means a random system. Sometimes it ends up being this is a lack of storytelling. Having a consistent spatial pattern allows for quick processing and more obvious ways to interactions. And it also reduces cognitive load throughout your app experience. Deciding on a spatial system early actually alleviates engineering costs as well as design time. UI animation through the experience creates a constant connection between the user and their interactions and intentions. My general goal with animation is that people don't even notice it, but they feel like the app is responding and engaging to their every single move and decision. Not overpowering their focus, but enhancing it. Too much is going to cause disorientation, and it signals that there's a lack of purpose. Focus maybe on just the three most informative elements and allow it to guide the user's eye through and to the next layout. There we go. When starting to design new features, designing while asking, how will this one element seamlessly transition into the next element? It's not screen one and screen two. Think of it, how does this one element evolve into its secondary state? If a member taps into a vertical preview, the logo moves from the small all the way up to the top, guiding the user's eye into its expanded state. The circle actually opens up so that it creates the backdrop. UI animation is essential to building storytelling within our product because it enhances what would be static pages into living, moving, breathing pieces. Animation literally becomes the connective tissue between people's different designs. The main theme through these 4 principles is to look through the new lens of storytelling. Understand that you're going to achieve nothing if you do not have trust and see the value in someone's precious time. Create balance between variety and depth so that you have focus. Provide pathways early to give your users choice at the very top level. And finally, you cannot be immersed and tell a story within a product without animation. Seeing product design as visual, UI, UX, animation, and research combined is the right way to start telling your audience a meaningful story that can guide and inform them. So if we step back to Daniel Coyle's words about how storytelling can actually create a new future and can empower people and light people's brains up like Vegas, I empower you to do that with storytelling within product design. Break up these static experiences, start with storytelling, and think about how you could become a storyteller to have a more immersive product for all of your members. Thank you so much. It's been a great time being here. Appreciate it.